Could we look at the third to last word on the first line?
We can. So last week, we saw the end of two different death scenes, and that's where we're picking up now. And we are here in the beginning of chapter 50, and Jacob is dead at the end of 49, and he's dead twice. He's dead in two different ways, and now we have to deal with the aftermath of that. So first you wanted to look at?
That third word, the third to last word in line 1.
Vayavk.
Vayevk
Oh,
or alav?
No, yeah, Vayevadch.
What do you do with the last letter?
So it's Vayevk,
Vaivk.
Huh.
not yet. It's not Vayevka, but Vayev, because we've got the shva ending the syllable Vayev, and then we can move on to what comes next, which is
That's what I said.
it's just
Vayev.
it's because it's a kaf. There's a dot in there, so it's a kaf sofit,
Mm-hmm.
and there's a shva. So all you have to do is pronounce the kaf. So it's Vayevk.
Vayevk.
Because we never see those two dots as the end syllable.
Sometimes.
Yeah, you always do when there's a chaf and it's not a cha, it's always a ch. What you don't see is the three dots that often.
Yeah.
Ah, yeah.
Usually you see the two dots and then they're up higher because remember the final chaf carries its vowel up high most of the time, unless it is a final kaf, in which case it has to carry the vowel low.
Unless what?
And there are
Right, like in line 6, I think.
there are
Line 6, you have the
yeah,
final.
finally, yeah, here's
Yeah.
a final chaf,
Yeah.
and it's a chaf, so there's no dots, so the vowel can go up. But or here at the beginning of the next line.
Mhm.
That's what we're used to. And sometimes instead of a avicha, for example, if it was her a female father's a female, it would be avayich.
Vayach.
Vayev.
Vayach.
Then you'd have the chaf with the shva, and we're used to going at the end. We're not used to going
Yeah.
at the end.
It's weird. It's a weird sound.
Vayev.
So it's vayevk.
Vayev.
I have another question, pronunciation. In line 4, the first word, how do you say that?
Okay, so what you have next to the I under the ayin is an accent mark that I forgot to remove.
Vayah.
So it's vayavru.
Vayavru.
Right,
you
yeah,
have
Ru. Okay,
Right,
I
yeah,
think you may not have pronounced it that way, so now I don't have a question.
okay, yeah. When you're reading it fast, you don't necessarily hear the separation of the two ahs,
Yeah.
The three.
but
Ooh.
well, I mean the two in a row.
Yeah.
Vayavru. But when you're reading it fast, you might only hear the vayavru, and it's sort of the two ahs blend. But when you're reading it, you're still thinking separation, pause.
And you
Yeah.
kind of accent the yud vayavru instead.
Vayavru.
Yeah.
Actually, it's
Yeah.
avru. Vayavru.
Avru. Vayavru.
But it's actually semi-unaccented for the
Yeah.
whole word.
Yeah.
Vayavru.
But isn't it interesting that we haven't had that female possessive? Hey,
They didn't own anybody. Anything.
Women didn't possess anything.
That's right.
You do get it actually in
Ruth.
things when we're talking about Yerushalayim,
Yeah.
which is feminine. You actually hear it in Lachadodi, because it's a female bride that we're talking to.
Right.
But in 3 years, we haven't seen it, I don't think.
Well, so far, no women, Dina didn't inherit anything. In the Dina story, there may have been, in talking about Dina, her brothers or something. I have to go back to Dina and see if there's any personal pronouns of Dina included in the in a possessive pronoun. But yeah, we haven't talked about any girls. A
Well,
little
Rachel's son, right?
Rachel, Sarah, yeah.
But their son, their children. So you
Well, no,
think,
no, it would still be Banayich would be her sons.
So how did Dina's story end?
With Shimon and Levi taking a little bit of a toll on the population.
Yeah. Yeah, that was,
Oh, she didn't do anything after that?
We don't hear from her again.
Okay,
nope,
too bad.
it's gone.
And I think that if any of these people who had sons had daughters, they didn't count, so they didn't get mentioned.
Right. Oh,
That's
but even so, the sons were the sons of the father, not the sons of the mother.
yeah,
Mhm.
except for Rachel. I mean, we sort of knew who her sons were, right?
Well, we knew who all the sons were, but we don't talk about them as the mother's sons very much.
Mm,
We have B'nai Yisrael, not B'nai Leah, which we get a little bit, but again, we're not talking about Leah. If it would be Leah, it would be Leah uvanayich, Leah and her sons.
mm.
But it's not. It's Yaakov and Leah and Rachel and Zilpah and Bilhah and Banav, his sons.
Wait,
It's amazing how that type of thing went through also in the 1800s. Because I was watching Sense and Sensibility last night,
oh,
and the father died, and the son
Uh-huh.
got everything, and the sisters got nothing
Mhm.
except 500 pounds a year.
that
That
old,
was
Yeah. Anyway,
okay.
When Karen, in England, when there weren't sons and the daughter inherited, starting in the 18th, 19th century, that's where those double-barreled names are. It meant she had the money, but she married whoever him was. She had more money, and that's how those two,
Huh.
Baring-Gould, those double names are.
Okay.
and we will get to eventually in the weekly cycle, if not in our group, the daughters of Slavchad.
Yes.
Mm.
So we do get inheritance by women all the way back in the Torah, and then it disappears again until the 18th century.
Yeah.
In any case, Jacob has pulled his feet up into his bed, curled up, and breathed his last. He has expired,
Mm.
which for me was terrifying when I got my very first credit card. And it said on the credit card, expires 1878.
You thought that was a personal remark?
Yes. So, Vayipol Yosef al Panei Aviv,
on his face.
Vayivk alav, Vayishak lo.
Just the-
Vayipol, and he fell. Yosef is the faller. Al Panei Aviv, on the face of his father, which his father didn't seem to mind because he's now dead. Vayevk, and he wept. Bacha is crying, weeping. Vayevk, and this is one of the very common forms of weeping. We don't get Vayevch, we get Vayevk.
Vayek.
And I think the harshness of the Vayevk was intended to express the harshness of the weeping, because it's much softer. Vayipol Yosef al Panei Aviv Vayevch alav, and you don't really hear, you don't have to emphasize it. Whereas if you read it, and again, this was oral probably, for many, many, many years. Vayipol Yosef al penei aviv vayevk. And you can really hear it.
Yeah.
It's very sad. Very sad.
Very sad. Vayevk alav, and he wept on him. Vayishach lo, and he kissed him. And he put a kiss to him. The nashak is kissing. So he dies, he falls on his face, he weeps, he kisses him, and then the next verse he turns around and gets back to business. Vayitzav Yosef et avadav et harofim lachanot et aviv vayachan tu harofim et Yisrael. Notice again in this story, the brothers are not present. And we will be asking the question at the end of this time, which won't be answered for 3 weeks. What about the brothers? Where are the brothers? Remember, in the red story, the brothers all were there, apparently getting a blessing, because Jacob is saying to them, Shimon and Levi, you guys are this, and Gad, you're that, and Asher, you're this, and Naphtali, you're that, and on to the brothers. And then the next thing we know, he's dead, and only Joseph is there. So Vayitzav Yosef, and commanded Yosef, Yosef commanded et avadav, his servants. He commanded his servants, and it doesn't tell us what he commanded his servants to do. Usually after tziva, we get some form of the infinitive, commanded to do something. Here he commanded his servants, and there's no to do.
Is that because we're supposed to know the burial rituals?
Well, no, he then, notice we have 2 ets.
Yeah.
So we have 2 separate direct objects. Or we have a general direct object and then a specific direct object. So we can read it as he commanded his servants. He commanded his rofim,
Not that.
in which case we might expect a v. He commanded his servants and he commanded his rofim, or he commanded his servants, that is the rofim. So he commanded his servants, that is his rofim. Rofeh in Hebrew means a healer, it's a doctor. But he's commanding his rofim, which are the medical professionals, if one wants to translate it that way. And now we get the infinitive, lachanot, to embalm. And chanat is embalming. So he commands his servants, specifically his medical servants, his medical professionals, or his funeral directors, or his medical examiners, lachanot, to embalm et aviv, his father. And apparently, as we are about to learn, this was a common Egyptian practice.
Not a Jewish practice, is it?
Certainly not in later days.
Maybe that's why the brothers weren't there.
We never know when all of the previous people were buried up in the cave, whether they embalmed before they were put in the cave. We're not told they were, and we're not told they weren't. But in Egypt, we're very specifically told not only that it was happening, but we're told how long it happens. We're given a little bit of detail of the Egyptian practice, according to the biblical author, a storyteller. So he commands them to embalm his father, vayachan tu, and they embalmed. Harofim, again, is the medical professionals, and they embalm Yisrael, not Yaakov. They embalm Yisrael. 3.
Oh, what's that
Yes.
mean? I mean,
Hmm?
it's the same person, right?
The Rophim,
No,
No,
no, no.
you,
Israel and Yaakov.
Yisrael.
Yisrael is the same person as Yaakov,
Right, right. So
but sometimes he's Yaakov and sometimes he's Yisrael.
just pointing out that it was
Indeed, right.
Israel that they
Just
embalmed.
pointing out that the text here uses Yisrael name, not Yaakov name,
B'nai
whereas
Israel.
previously it was Yaakov. As
So-
it was back and forth between Yaakov and Yisrael.
So he's more like a Israel when he got buried. Or
Right.
that,
Well, it's interesting again, he gets embalmed as Yisrael in his high Jewish, as it were, spiritual self.
no.
We don't know, by the way, whether he wanted that.
It's hard to say after you die.
Well, we don't have any advanced directives.
True.
Say, right.
In all that time that he was blessing his sons, he apparently never gave an advanced directive about himself.
Mm.
Well, he did want to be taken back and buried with his father and his grandfather.
In the blue story,
Oh, yeah. Okay.
This is red.
and by the way, in the blue story, he's not embalmed.
Oh,
Okay.
He's not embalmed. We get silence in the blue story.
mm.
But in the red story, we get a very detailed Egyptian world that impacted the red people, the Judah people who were will be bordering on Egypt, as opposed to the blue people of the northern kingdom who are not bordering on Egypt. So they embalmed him. 3, Vayimla'u lo arba'im yom, ki ken yimla'u yemei hachanutim, vayivku oto Mitzrayim shiv'im yom. So 3, Vayimla'u, and Malay is full.
Oh, okay.
Vayimla'u, they fulfilled to him. So they fulfilled to him arba'im yom. They are doing this, filling him with embalming fluid for 40 days.
Why isn't it Yomim?
So, well, it's arba'im yom, literally 40 day. And we find most often in the Torah, when we have numbers listed, digits are multiples and tens and hundreds are singular. So Mea Shana, 100 year, not Mea Shanim.
Hmm.
Arba'im Yom, not Arba'im Yamim.
Oh, so can you repeat that again? Which ones get
So
the,
if it
you
were
say that-
7 days, it would be Sheva Yamim.
right?
But if it's Arba'im, if it's a tens place, then it's singular Yom.
Oh, okay.
So we might translate it as the 40-day period.
Yeah.
Mm.
And then we don't say 40 days, we say 40 day.
Is it that way in modern Hebrew too?
Probably not, actually. But I don't do a lot of counting in modern Hebrew with the numbers of days.
So is this that they filled him, like they filled his body with
Well, they fulfilled the
they
process,
fulfilled a obligation
or the process.
Oh,
The process is a 40-day process.
of
Oh.
embalming or just praying or
We don't get that detail on the embalming process.
to embalming.
Yeah, the embalming process, the draining, the filling, the wrapping, the praying over the wrapping, we don't know, we don't have the process. We just know that there was a medical professional system in Egypt that was tasked with the role of embalming.
Wow.
Because it's not his servants who are doing it, his servants who are the the embalming professionals, the medical professionals. And they fulfill for him the 40-day process. We could translate it as that. And why? Ki ken yimla'u yemei hachanutim, because that is the fulfilling of the days of the embalmings. So the process takes 40 days. So they did all 40 days. They didn't use any shortcuts.
What's Yemei mean?
Yemei days of.
Oh,
Days of the embalmingness is plural. Chanutim. The embalmings.
Mm.
So all of the steps, one could say, of embalming is a 40-day process.
The word can means like yes, right?
Well, Cain means thus.
Thus, it doesn't
But
also.
literally, it means we use it as yes.
is this on the trail of 40 things? 40
Probably.
days in the wilderness, 40 days to embalm,
Yeah, I mean, it took them a long time to do the embalming.
but it's a special number. I mean, it's
It
not
is, yes,
50.
40 means it really took a long time. Again, we don't have any details here, and we'd have to go back into some Egyptologists to tell us what was the embalming process and how long did it take 3,000 years ago.
Or this is the 40 days is the Hebrew period of time. That means it's special.
Exactly. Because this, again, is the Hebrew story about the Egyptian process.
Yeah, so they don't care what the Egyptians did. We do it for 40 days because that's our
Or we say they did it for 40
yeah,
days.
yeah, because it's our number.
That's right. 40 is our great number.
The red story.
But is 40 related to any kind of mourning process?
No,
Being in the wilderness might be mourning.
certainly mourning all the people who dropped along the wayside.
Well, and
But this,
a
yes,
singular event, not to be
Right.
repeated.
it would say, as I say, it probably said they did it for the full time. And we're going to say 40 because that's a really long, they didn't, the emphasize, they didn't take any shortcuts.
Mhm.
They didn't give him less than they gave any other Egyptian for whom they did it.
XXXIV translated as it required 40 days, because that was.
Right. And Cain means thus. We have that way back at the beginning of Genesis. Cain asa, thus he did.
Mhm.
Vayhi, and it was so. So we say yes for Cain, but Cain is more of an affirmation or an affirmative of it was done.
Mhm.
For thus is the fulfilling of the days of the embalmings. Vayivku, and they wept, oto, him. They cried for him. They wept for him. Who is the they? Mitzrayim.
Oh.
Egypt wept for the death of Yisrael, Yaakov. And they wept for him Shivim Yom, 70-day, a 70-day mourning period or weeping period.
It seems odd that they would weep, especially that long, for somebody that they're not intimately connected with and didn't maybe even know.
Well, it would seem odd except for who's telling the story.
Yeah.
His team.
So according to us, his death was so impactful that all of Egypt mourned for him.
It
But
tells
they-
us how much they love Joseph, right?
Or Jacob.
No, Joseph, the son.
Well, yeah, I mean, or they wept for him they gave Joseph not a Shiva period, a 7-day period. They gave him a Shivim day
Yeah.
period, a 70-day period of
But
mourning.
most of them wouldn't have even known Jacob. Jacob lived in Goshen.
Right, but it was
Of
the
course.
father, it was the father of your beloved leader.
Exactly.
saved
Joseph
the
is second to
salvation.
Pharaoh. So they're providing a 70-day mourning support to Joseph for the death of his father,
That makes sense.
That's nice.
which is very nice.
Yeah.
And also, it's a statement by us that what they did for us.
Mm.
Right.
And this is setting up the contrast, especially as we close out the book of Genesis and we'll begin the book of Exodus and what happens in Egypt. A Pharaoh arises who did not know Joseph.
Oh,
So Joseph was so beloved that all of Egypt mourned with him. And as soon as we finish this chapter, the next thing that happens is, and now they're going to enslave us all. So this sets up a much larger contrast between the Egypt of Joseph and the Egypt post-Joseph.
Mhm.
So all of Egypt is observing a 70-day mourning period for Jacob, for Yisrael. Vaya'avru yemei v'chito vayadaber Yosef el beit paro lemor imna matzati chen be'enechem dabruna be'ozne paro lemor. And notice we have here in 4 lemor, at the end of 4 lemor, and in 5 lemor. Lemor is the punctuation mark of the punctuation for quotations. So we are going to have an embedded quotation system going on here. They didn't differentiate between double quotes and single quotes to indicate we have embedded quotes within quotes. They just kept saying lemor, lemor, lemor.
What does Lamor actually mean?
Saying, literally to say.
So you would say at the beginning and the end of a quote?
Nope, just at the beginning. You end the quote by then moving on to a third person narrative as opposed to a second person narrative. He said to them, quote, you will do blah, blah, whatever saying. And in the saying, he said, and you will say, and then he said, and when you say, you will say. So we're going to get, and if you look over at my English, you notice I have whole bunches of embedded quotes over here.
Mhm.
Thus that when I end up with like double, and in some cases it'll be triple. But
Mhm.
in Hebrew, you don't have, first of all, it's not written, it's oral. And when it is written, it's written without punctuation. So you needed this story to be told with verbal punctuation. A great Danish pianist will come along in our days and teach us verbal punctuation. And you can watch Victor Borge do that in some of his great YouTubes.
also, if this was essentially being transmitted orally, it makes it easier to remember, I should think.
Exactly. So vaya avru, avar is past. And we are ivrim because we pass over, we pass across. So via avru yemei v'chito, and we pass through, we cross over after the days of the weeping for him. V'chito, weeping for him, or his weeping.
What part of speech is, I mean, it's different than Vayik. What this is
So
uh
bechia is weepingness. Yevk is he wept. So we're now in the noun.
The German,
Oh,
V'chito, the weeping for him.
thanks.
So the days of the weeping for him now have passed. We've crossed over from the days of weeping, and Yosef again is back to business. Vaydaber Yosef el Beit Paro. So Yosef goes and speaks to the house of Pharaoh. So now he's talking to the perhaps palace guards at the entrance to Pharaoh's court. I don't think he actually talks to the house.
Autonomy.
He talks to the house of Pharaoh, Lamor, saying, so this is what he's saying to the intermediaries between the people who are coming to see Pharaoh and Pharaoh himself. So he talks to the intermediaries, the house of Pharaoh, and says, Imna matzati chen be'enechem. Formulaic, matzah chen be'ayin. Find favor in the eyes. This is how you start a request. If I have found favor in your eyes. And here it not only says im matzati, but it says im na matzati. If please I found favor in your eyes. Notice your eyes is plural because he's talking to these intermediaries. He's talking to Pharaoh's answering service
So
or receptionists.
pain is favor?
Chen is favor.
favor.
Favor, compassion. Same word as chana.
And v'chesed v'rachamim.
Exactly. Chen and chesed and rachamim. You have to find English synonyms for favor, compassion, kindness, goodness. So if please I have found favor in your eyes, that is, he's buttering up the receptionist's team. Dabruna be'oznei Pharaoh, Lamor. Speak, you, plural. Dabru, na. Speak, please, be'oznei Pharaoh, in the ears of Pharaoh, saying. So now, here's my message. So here's the message I want you to deliver to Pharaoh. 5. Avi hishbiani lemor, hine anochi met, bekivri asher kariti li, be'eretz Canaan, shama tikbereni, va'ata e'elena, ve'ekbera et avi, va'ashuva. Lots of stuff here in 5.
Slowly.
So slowly. So Joseph goes to the receptionist team, butters them up, asks them to deliver a message to Pharaoh. Lamor, the end of 4. 5. Here's the message. Avi hishbiani. My father made me swear. Shiva, that root is the take an oath. Hishbiani, the causative form of the verb. Hishbiani did it to me. So caused to swear me. Caused me to swear. Or made me take an oath.
Same.
Or made me promise. Lamor, here's what my father said to me in the oath. Hine, and by the way, nowhere in the previous story did we have this actually said in the story when Jacob and Joseph were talking to each other.
Mm.
Hine anochi met. Behold, I will die. I am dying, or I am deadness.
Which is,
I'm on my last gasp. This is my dying declaration.
what is met?
Dead.
Mace, mate.
Met is dead.
Oh, so Anochi,
Talmavet is the shadow of death. Malach HaMavet, the angel of death. We're going to
So
be reading about the Malach HaMavet next week.
see, so if it says Anochi met, how do you know it's not saying I am dead?
Well,
Behold, I am dead.
I'm assuming that his speakingness after he's dead is limited.
It's a
Huh.
way, it's a way of
The reflex.
showing your power.
I mean, he dies and he hits
But it
the
could mean
replay
that,
button
right?
on his recorder.
Anochi met, I am dead.
Yeah, he plays the pre-recorded video that, and the video says, if you're watching this, I'm dead.
So this is his dying declaration.
This is his dying declaration, admissible in the court of Pharaoh.
Uh,
So, behold, I am dead, or will be dead, or am dying, or am about to be dead. But behold, I am dead, or as I am dead. Bekivri asher kariti li. So in my grave place, in my burial place, kever, remember, is a burial place. In and kivri, my burial place. Bekivri, in my burial place. Asher kariti li be'eretz Canaan, that I dug for me in the land of Canaan. We seem to have a bit of a problem here, in contrast with the blue story, as to where he wants to be buried. According to this, he dug his own grave in Canaan. And we don't have a location for it.
will you do the words individually again?
Yes, so Bikivri, in my burial place,
Yeah.
Asher, that Kariti, I dug, Li, for me, Be'eretz, inland Canaan of Canaan. So I dug a burial site. I prearranged. I went to the local cemetery association and bought a plot, or dug my own plot in Canaan, and it's sitting there waiting for my body to go into it. Again, no story about this previously. Maybe there was, and it didn't get included, but all of a sudden we learn in this version of the story that Jacob had actually created his own burial plot somewhere in Canaan.
Did he say before he wanted to be buried with his father?
In
His
the blue
father's
story,
forefathers?
in the blue story, he said, bury me in the cave of Machpelah. In the red story, he says, bury me in the burial plot that I created for myself in Canaan.
Sorry, I froze. Before, in the other version, the northern version, didn't he say he wanted to be buried with his forefathers?
Exactly. But
He
in
did.
the red version, he doesn't.
Yeah.
Red version, he says, I created my own burial spot.
But were his forefathers in Canaan?
Well, they're all up in Canaan. And when you put the two together, that's what this is talking about.
Mhm.
But when you put the two separately, that's not necessarily what this is talking about. Because his burial place in the southern story would be in the southern area.
Mhm.
His burial place in the northern story would be in the northern area. His burial in the common story is in the northern area, which is now the United Kingdom. So Asher Kariti, that I created for me, that I dug for me in the land of Canaan. Shama Tikbareni, there you will bury me. Tikaver, you will bury. Tikbareni, you will bury me. End of quote. How do we know it's end of quote? Because the next thing switches to first person. So this is the vow, according to this story, that Jacob, Yisrael, put on Joseph, not on the brothers, but just on Joseph, that he wants to be buried up in Canaan in his designated burial place that he created. And this is the message within the message that's being transmitted by these receptionists to Pharaoh. Ve'ata, and now, so now we're out of the oath and back to the what is Joseph saying to the receptionists. And now, E'elena ve'ekbara. E'elena, I will go up, please. Ole, going up. E'ele, future first person singular. The aleph at the beginning tells us that the verb is in the future first person singular. If it were a nun na'ale, it would be future first person plural. So our future forms of the verb give us the pronoun at the same time. So if it were to say ani e'ele, then it would be I will go up, because the pronoun is embedded within the verb. So e'elena, I will go up, please. The ekbara, and again, the aleph, I will bury. Again, not we will bury, I will bury. Not we will go up, but I will go up. Part of the reason for this, of course, would be Pharaoh, as was pointed out, really didn't care what was happening in Goshen.
Which is please?
Nah,
Oh,
we had it up above an imna, if please. Na is please.
and that's, is it part of the verb or is it like an adverb tacked on?
Exactly, that's why there's a hyphen.
Okay,
Elena, I will go up, please.
Yep.
But again, the message to Pharaoh, Pharaoh really doesn't care what the guys on the other side in the Goshen area are doing. He only cares about what his second in command is doing. So Joseph is putting this in first person. I will go up and I will bury et avi, my father. Va'ashuva, and I will return. So again, the aleph in front of the shuv. Shuv is return. Ashuv, I will return.
Return to Canaan and return to Egypt after.
Mitzrayim.
Return to Pharaoh. Yeah, I will go up and I will come back.
So what is the difference between a and eh?
What comes after it is part of the,
And a shuva.
yeah, it just depends on what comes after it as part of the verb.
And a-
So it's the letter, not the vowel tacked on.
Correct. So aleph before the verb gives us the future first person singular. Whether the aleph is a or eh is again a verbal technique. It's the ease of the orator. Ashuva as opposed to eshuva. And ashuva again would be the same kind of, remember, every time we lengthen an eh to an ah, we know that we're using that as a verbal punctuation to end a sentence or phrase. Gafen, aretz, ashuva.
Are those vowel sounds differences in modern Hebrew related to where people came from? Well, you know, like the Ashkenazi, we always learned or. And so-
Yes, you know, in the Ashkenazi, they would read this as va'ashuva.
right. And
The
other,
Sephardic say ashuva.
and within the Sephardic or Mizrahi population, would they be different?
There are different pronunciations in the Taimani, the Yemenite, the Mizrahi, but modern Israel is basically a Sephardic-oriented
Yeah.
pronunciation system. All right, so I'll go up, I will bury, and I will come back. So now we know we're at the end of the quote of the quote of the quote. So this was Joseph goes to the receptionist and says to them, here's my message. Within my message, I also want you to make sure that you quote accurately what my father said to me. And now I'm back at my message, which is tell Pharaoh, I'll go up, I'll come back, I'll bury him in between. 6, Vayomer Paro, and apparently Pharaoh got the message. Vayomer Paro, Ale ukvor et avicha ka'asher hishbiecha. So Vayomer Paro, and Pharaoh now says, Ale, go up, ukvor, and bury. These are imperative singulars, masculine. Again, not plural, but singular. The message is given back to, or Pharaoh calls Joseph in and says, I got your message and here's my response. Because it doesn't say Vayomer Paro el Yosef. It does not say Pharaoh said to Joseph. It simply says Pharaoh said, which means our director staging this play gets to choose whether Pharaoh calls Joseph in and says it to him or says to the receptionist, here's my message back. Go up, bury your father. Ka'asher hishbiecha, as that, ka'asher, as that, hishbiecha, hishbia, again, caused you to swear, made you promise, cha, you. So as he made you promise. So do what your father swore you to. So Joseph is given permission. Vaya'al Yosef likbor et aviv. Vaya'alu ito kol of de Pharaoh ziknei veto v'chol ziknei eretz Mitzrayim. So Vaya'al, and went up, singular, Yosef. So it's not Vaya'alu Yosef v'achav, Joseph and his brothers. It's just Joseph went up. Likbor, to bury, et aviv, his father. Vaya'alu, now we have a plural going up, and they went up. Who's the they? Ito, with him. So Vaya'alu ito, they went up with him.
Picture.
Who is the one who went up with him? Call of de Pharaoh, all the servants of Pharaoh.
Oh,
They're the ones who are going up. And again, is this a list or is this a category with subsets? And the answer, of course, is you can read it whichever way you want because the Hebrew is, as much of the Torah, wonderfully ambiguous. So they went up, that is, the servants of Pharaoh went up, Ziknei Veto, the elders of his house, V'chol Ziknei Eretz Mitzrayim, and all the elders of the land of Egypt. By the way, Zaken can be translated into the Latin, by way of the Latin into the English, as senator.
Ziknei.
So all of the senators.
Of the Oregs.
Nobody from the house, but well, actually from the house they went out. Ziknei Beito, the senators of the house. The Ziknei Eretz Mitzrayim, and the senators of Egypt. So this is quite a troop going up with him to bury his father.
Wow.
And are they going up out of honor to him, or are they going up to make sure he comes back?
Yes.
I think they wouldn't pick the elders to wrestle him.
Oh, well, except they can quote the law.
Exactly.
You promised.
Now you have to wait 3 weeks to find out what about his brothers. Do they get involved in the burial?
That's the 27th, right?
That's the 27th.
And
After Passover, Palm Sunday, Easter.
in the meantime, we have 3 lectures about the Siddur, right?
Actually, that starts right about then. We have on
28th.
That's in person,
we
right?
have 3 weeks. Well, it's actually, I think it's going to be hybrid.
Hmm.
What
City
did you,
Class, here we
do-
go,
what,
the
what
28th.
did you just say?
So on the 28th of April at 7 o'clock, Monday night, and the 12th, and rather the 5th of April, 7 o'clock, and the 12th of April at 7 o'clock. I'll be doing
May.
an overview to the
It's
worship
May.
service.
May.
Start that
May
again.
rather, April 28, May 5, and May 12.
Uh,
I will be doing an overview to the Siddur class, which is for the Bar Mitzvah group, but open to anyone.
And what are the topics?
They're an overview of the worship service, the Jewish traditional worship service.
Content or shape?
Shape, mostly shape, but within shape content.
Mm-hmm.
The material and all of the information about it will be posted in the calendar probably next week.
And anyone could go?
Anyone can go. Tiferet asked me if I was willing to do it hybrid, and I said yes. So that's up to her how she does it hybrid.
Mm-hmm.
What days of the week are those in
Those
your
are
head?
Monday nights. Monday nights at 7 o'clock.
Monday.
So you just sign up on the calendar?
Or probably just, if the link like this is done, you don't even have to sign up.
Oh, this is the link.
Yeah, that's
You should get a
how she
link.
usually does it. She
Yeah.
put- Think in
There
the
is a sign up. There's a sign up, and they did ask, are you coming in person or in Zoom? I think they're trying to get a feel for how many people
Oh,
would.
right.
Right. I think they want to know, but I don't think they're going to close it to only those people who sign up.
In the 3 days, is it the whole liturgy or what's the different, how do you break up the material?
So
in
it'll
3
be
days?
the difference between morning, afternoon, and evening
Oh.
worship, difference between weekday and Shabbat and holiday, and then specifics on the flow and structure within each of the services. So within the service, there's a pre-service, a main service, and a post-service.
Mhm.
So it'll be an overview of all of that. The material, the overview and the material, basic material will also be posted on the website.
So if we want to have another bar mitzvah, I'll know.
What's the second date?
May 5th.
So it's 3 in a row, April 8/28, May 5, and May 12.
It's all Monday night.
All Monday nights at 7 o'clock.
And you said the difference between morning and evening prayer and then what?
So the worship service actually, we are required to pray 3 times a day, but the Shema is required to be said 2 times a day, but the Amidah is required to be said 3 times a day. So how do we get the 3 worship services, the morning service, the afternoon service, and the evening service? And then within the service, there are preparation for formal worship, and then cool down or reflection after formal worship. That's a quick overview. The rest of it, you'll have to wait for the class.
Do you have a lectionary that, yeah, you do, that on this day, this is what you read?
Only for the Torah. Well, certain prayers are said, yes. There are certain prayers that are said during holidays that aren't said when there's not holidays. Yeah. And in addition to that, there are certain prayers that cannot be said unless you have a minyan.
Don't you
One of the things I like to point out between a very basic difference between Jewish worship and Catholic worship is if there's no priest, it's not formal worship. Doesn't matter how many people are in the church.
Right.
If there is a priest and there's nobody else, it's formal worship.
Right.
In Judaism, if there's no
Even though
rabbi,
it says
doesn't-
3 or more.
Yeah, well, in Judaism, if there are 10, then it's formal worship whether the rabbi's there or not.
Oh, isn't that interesting?
And if the rabbi is there and there aren't 10, then it can't be formal worship.
Mhm. Yeah.
In any case, material for 3 weeks from now, just to give you a quick look at what you'll be doing.
Uh,
We have to close out the burial of Jacob in the red story. And then we have to get back to, so now how did he get buried in the blue story? That's 3 weeks from today.
And what
okay.
Chapter, what was the chapter and verse there?
It's